We were really trying to break America. We had been hugely successful in Britain and Europe. We had American management. We were spending a lot of time in America. We'd finally got onto a label that wanted to release our records. We'd started to have hits. We'd been immensely successful with the song If You Leave from the Pretty in Pink movie, which was our first big hit in America. And I don't know how we got on the tour, but presumably our management got our agents to talk to their agent, and I guess they wanted to do this big size tour that would culminate in the big gig at the Pasadena Rose Bowl. We certainly needed to support them. We weren't big enough to do anything like that kind of size tour on our own. I don't know whether they felt they needed us to just fill those extra seats, but it certainly it was obviously a very, very tasty package for the promoters and obviously for the audience, because it was sold out everywhere. I know it was breaking box office and merchandise records everywhere it went, that tour. The only thing was, for us, we were getting paid $5,000 a night and losing huge amounts of money, and they were probably earning enough to retire on. We weren't surprised, because we'd seen how big the Depeche Mode had become in terms of a live act in America. I mean, they had worked hard at it, and they were huge, and we knew they were huge. That's why we wanted to support them, because we were going to play to a bigger audience than we could play to on our own. I think the whole tour was massively successful. The interesting thing really came after the tour, because Depeche Mode went on to make what I consider to be their best album, and it capitalised on all the success and the hard work. The Violator album was huge, incredibly successful, a really great album, and took them absolutely onto that massive next step level. And what did we do? We self-destructed. There was four acts. There was ourselves and Depeche, who'd been on the entire tour, and then there was Thomas Dolby and Wire. I remember being terrified, so frightened that my stage fright manifested itself in, I guess, form of narcolepsy. I just fell asleep. They had to wake me up 5 minutes before I went on stage, because my body just shut down. I was like, can't face this. This is scary. I remember it being a great gig after we'd got through Enola Gay, because we went on stage, started the drum machine to Enola Gay. The audience went nuts. I counted it in 1, 2, 3, 4, and just as we came in with the whole band for the main melody, there was a power spike in the generators. Everything went off on stage for a split second, and when it came back on, there was just me and the drums. The keyboards had gone off. They're computer keyboards, and the two keyboard players were thrashing dead keyboards, which were just reading back to them, "Disc read error, this will take a while." And so we did this dub version of Enola Gay for about a minute whilst the fucking keyboards reloaded, which the audience probably thought was some particular dub trick we had thrown in to amuse them for a minute. Then it all came back together again. The gig was amazing, but it was an inauspicious start to a massive concert. But it was an amazing day. I think there was a certain element on that tour, if I remember rightly, of a little bit of sense of competition, in the sense that, we could go out there and play Enola Gay, Electricity, If You Leave. We had hits in America. We had that, by that stage, built a certain audience. And by the time we came off stage, we had really kicked the audience's arse. So it was like, follow that, lads. And they would, bastards. But I think there was an element of, sort of like, we're going to try our hardest, see if you can top that. There are some bands who tend to not fraternise with other bands, and there's some bands who tend to just be very blinkered. They'll do their gig and nobody else, and not interested. But we would make a point of making sure we watched them, and it was a very nice tour. I mean, the band and the crews all intermingled. I mean, the tour lasted 3 months. I mean, we all got to know each other pretty well. We'd have days off where we'd all get together and you know, have a picnic and play cricket, for crying out loud. I mean, there was a couple of cricket games on that tour, which got quite competitive too. To keep our costs down, we were actually all travelling on one bus with our crew, so we effectively travelled with their crew. Depeche was sort of, I suppose, jetting around, you know. But so there was just one day off when there was this sort of pick-up cricket game. The crews basically played, and so we sort of had us and our crew against their crew, and it was really, you know, sort of like somebody had a cricket bat, there was a tennis ball and a make-do wicket, and it was just a bit of a laugh. And we beat their crew. So I think they got a bit pissed off about that. So the next day off, they turned up with pads and a proper ball and stumps, and we were like, okay, now this is a bit serious, isn't it? And I seem to recall, actually, that guy who'd been our monitor man, who was then on their crew, Nick, was a fucking demon bowler. And I was like, I've got more gigs to do. I've got to sing. I'm not facing this. I'm out. I'm off. You know? But yes, they had their revenge. That once the Depeche Boys turned up with the proper kit, we got soundly thrashed. And I think the final result was 2-1 to them in cricket games. There was something interesting as well that I discovered about Depeche Mode on that tour, because I think in the very early days we'd seen them as a band, as a group, as a homogenised group of people who functioned as a band unit. It became fairly evident that by the end of the 80s that they had formed themselves into something that was a lot more than just a band. There seemed to be quite definitive job demarcations. And I don't think I'm wrong, but I think effectively there was 4 separate individuals fulfilling 4 completely separate roles by that stage. There was, you know, there was Martin, who wrote the songs. There was Alan, who was the musician, who could really play and sort of produce and hold it all together. There was Dave, just shut up and sing, Dave gone. You know, I mean, there was an element of that which was quite strange. It was like, you know, just Dave, you're just the singer. Shut up and sing and go and prance around in front of the audience, okay? And then there was Andy, and it was like, what does Andy do? And then he realised that, well, he's kind of the manager, really. And when you could kind of sneak up behind him on stage and realise that he wasn't really playing anything on stage. And we used to joke about it. We used to say, you're not actually playing a keyboard, are you? You're the manager. You're playing the cash register. You've got an accounting machine there going, merchandising, $57,000. Everybody clap! Put your hands up for that one! Right, and I'll calculate the next bit now. Everybody applaud! He wasn't playing a fucking keyboard. He was working his cash machine.